And let me share screen.
Recording has started. There it is. Oh my gosh.
Okay. Well, we've got a small group today, which is fine because we do have some folks who signed up and we can share the recording with them since it is a busy time of the semester. Okay, so welcome everyone. This session is about open access and support we have here at UNCG for open access. This is part of the Research and Applications webinar series, and thanks to Sam Harlow for facilitating and organizing this. So I'm Anna Kraft. I'm the coordinator of scholarly communications in the university libraries here at UNCG, and open access is one of the main areas that I work in. I want to acknowledge that fall 2026 has a lot going on. There is just a lot happening at all levels. And if you don't have time to remember everything that we're going to cover today, it is fine. We're going to cover a lot. There's a lot happening. You don't have to remember it all. The libraries are here to help. The libraries are open. I know y'all have likely seen the renovations happening on campus. Our building is open, not the tower, but the other side of the building. I've linked our website here and our hours for specific spaces and services, as well as renovation information. And also for those who may be new to campus, if you're not sure who your liaison librarian is, there is a link here that will take you to that page because we do have a liaison librarian for every area, every department on campus. So those are just some things to get us started out today. So we do have many services, resources, and spaces, but our main focus today is about open access education and publishing and sharing open access scholarship. So let's go ahead and dive in. First, we're going to cover some basics. So of course, open access is our free, immediate, online access to scholarly and academic works. So no paywalls. No need to sign in, nothing that is going to keep someone from reading that article or scholarship. Closed access is the other side of that coin. This is an older model that is, of course, still around. It's our subscription-based model where individuals or institutions pay for access to scholarly content. So either you as an individual would be subscribing, or maybe your library would be subscribing so that you would have access like we do here. In this situation, the content, like the journal articles, would be behind a paywall. So they're not accessible to those who don't subscribe or who are not affiliated with a subscribing institution. And this model goes back to the print world where initially, journals would be sent out physically in paper, and they would go to those subscribers, including libraries, and people who wanted to read them would have to go there to read that content. So this is a pre-internet model. We still have it, but now the content is behind a paywall online. And of course, this is an example of a paywall. So I'm being asked to either pay $53 for a single article or almost $260 for an issue if I don't have subscription access through my institution. So these costs can really add up and can keep people from being able to get access to the content that they might need. Open access, which removes those paywalls, of course, has many benefits. The opportunities for exposure, the opportunities for practitioners to apply findings, taxpayers getting value for money, where some scholarship may be funded through grant and tax dollars. And then the taxpayers would have direct access through open access to see the results of that research that they helped fund. All of these things are good things. One thing that authors may be particularly interested in is the citation impact of open access. So there's studies showing that articles made available through open access tend to have higher citation counts than those that are published through toll or subscription access. So if you as an author are trying to increase the impact and be able to demonstrate the impact of your scholarship, especially article-based scholarship, publishing through open access can likely help you. Typically, we talk about journals and articles when we're talking about open access content, but many different types of things can be shared through open access. This could include data sets, it could include books, pretty much any type of scholarly or research output, if the copyright holder allows it, can be shared online through open access. What can we do with these materials? Read them, learn from them, share them, cite them, all of these things at no cost. But there are things that we can't do. We can't edit or otherwise change open access content, and we can't reuse that content in other work without explicit permission. If you're looking for materials that do allow editing and changing, you may be looking for open educational resources, which are related, but are generally licensed more broadly to allow alterations and are typically meant to be classroom content, teaching content, not necessarily those articles that are coming out in scholarly journals. So open access is increasingly becoming a norm and expectation in certain areas of research and scholarship. And if you're receiving federal grant funds for your research, you may actually be required to share your articles and potentially data sets through open access. And so we've talked about benefits. There are a lot associated with open access, but there also are challenges. And one of those is cost, because the funding model is different when you're publishing openly. So before we talk about cost, just a few resources. The Directory of Open Access Journals, we're going to look at that more in just a moment. And we have an open access guide and tutorial here at UNCG that are on our site. Also, if your class or your lab or department or other group needs guidance or education about open access, that's something that I can help with. So consider reaching out. All right, let's talk about funding now. So first, I want to take a really quick look at the Directory of Open Access Journals. This is a free site online that indexes open access journals and articles. And it has an easy search interface where you can limit to journals or articles and do a basic search. There is content in many different languages, content from many different countries. And one of the things I want to highlight here is that they've got close to 15,000 journals that do not have publishing fees. So this could be a place potentially to look for open access journals to publish in where you would not have to pay. They have almost 24,000 journals in total that are indexed here. Many of these do have publication costs, but the majority do not. And if we look at a record for one of these journals, here we're looking at the Journal of Avian Biology. We see a little bit of information about it, the ISSN numbers that help us identify it. And we see information about cost. So this journal charges up to $2,600 as an article processing charge in order to publish. We see information about the licensing for the journal, as well as who the publisher is, what language they publish in, and other organizations that are associated with them. So this system can help you understand more about journals that you might be considering publishing in. Let's say a little bit more about APCs here. These are article processing charges, and they are fees charged to authors in some open access journals. So since we don't have subscriptions with open access journals, the cost structure is different. This funding structure shifts those publication costs from subscribers to authors. And these fees might sometimes be written into grants or maybe paid by an employer, but not always. And they can be quite expensive. So these are cost ranges for some publishers that we work with here at UNCG. And you can see that these are pretty broad ranges. These costs might be nominal, like $50 at the lower end of the Elsevier cost bracket. They might also be really exorbitant, like low five figures, also in the Elsevier bracket here, as well as Springer Nature. The average that we typically see is like $3,000 to $4,000, which is a lot of money. So these can effectively price authors out of being able to share their work through open access. Sadly. So this can be a real challenge. Funding open access scholarship can be difficult. We do luckily have some options here at UNCG that can help with this. we have the Open Access Publishing Fund, and we also have funding agreements with 8 academic publishers. And I'm going to say a little bit more about that in just a moment. But first, if you're submitting your manuscript to any of the publishers that we work with, you definitely want to make sure that your UNCG affiliation is very clear. And the best way to do that is to use your UNCG email address when you are submitting your work. Okay, so let's start with the Open Access Publishing Fund, or the OAPF. This offers awards of up to $1,500 to offset the cost of publishing in eligible open access journals. So $1,500 is likely not going to cover full APCs like we saw on that previous slide. The cost is likely going to be higher. But with this, the goal is to fund more authors, at least some, rather than just a few authors at the total amount. And there may be some additional ways, depending on where you're publishing, to lower that cost further. The funds for the OAPF come from the university libraries, as well as UNCG's Division of Research and Engagement. Authors are limited to 1 award per year, and you cannot stack these. So even if you've got 2 UNCG authors on one paper, only one of them would be eligible for funding. More info is on our guide. And if you've got questions, we would be glad if you reached out to either me or my colleague, Christine Fisher. We can definitely help with questions about this. We also have publishers that we have APC waivers with. So situations where, depending on the journal that you're publishing in, you might get full APC coverage. And the journals that we work with in this situation are the American Chemical Society, Cambridge University Press, Elsevier, Springer Nature, and Wiley. But you can see that there are some limitations. So in certain cases, we only have like a certain number of APC waivers, or we're limited to certain journals within that publisher's portfolio. I'm not going to go into the full details about all of these today, but know that if you have questions at any point about if journals are, if your target journal is included in one of our publisher deals, please reach out to me. I will be glad to help. And I'm going to say a little bit more about these distinctions with gold and hybrid in a moment. So for most of these deals, you or somebody else at UNCG needs to be listed as the corresponding author of the manuscript in order for your article to be eligible. So you don't have to be the first author, but you do need to be the corresponding author, the one who is submitting the paper in the system and working with the publisher on the steps through review, publication, production, publication, etc. If you're in a situation where you have a co-corresponding author, where there are 2 of you in that role and that other person is at another institution, you likely want to make sure that you at UNCG are the one who actually puts in the funding request. Because if someone using a non-UNCG email address puts in that request, it may get bumped out of our funding queue. Not all journals are eligible. I'm going to say more about that in a moment. Also, not all of our funding deals are forever. So there may be some changes to availability in 2027. We actually are expecting to bring on a couple of new publishers or improved deals in 2027. I don't have full details about that right now, but more info will come probably early 2027 about that. And with any of these deals, if you have questions, please contact me. I will be glad to help. We also have a couple of publishers that we have pretty nominal APC discounts with, 5 to 10% with Sage, IGI Global, and MDPI. So these could lower your APC a little bit, and then you could also apply to the Open Access Publishing Fund to potentially get up to $1,500 to further lower that APC. So we've seen mentioned that some of these deals are limited in terms of like hybrid versus gold journals. And just for clarity with this, with gold open access, all of the content in the journal is open access. It is a fully open access journal. And there's no option for authors to say, I would like to opt out and not pay an APC. So the funding model with this, with gold journals is typically with article processing charges, since there are no subscriptions. We do see journals that sometimes operate under a no APC model, and they share their content through open access. And that's what we would call a diamond or platinum journal, because there are no fees for authors. And typically those journals are funded through like institutional subsidies. They are being funded through like being hosted at a university and people there doing the work of the journal as part of their job. That's at least one way. You may not see the term gold used by publishers. You may just see this called an open access journal. Hybrid is different. So this is a subscription-based journal, so closed access by default, but it allows authors the option to say, I want to pay an APC so that my individual article will be available through open access. So this results in some content being closed, just available to subscribers, and some content being available openly for anyone. And this is a popular model for publishers because it means they essentially get paid twice. They get paid by subscribing institutions like libraries, and they are making money through APCs. It is much less popular with libraries, who sometimes are the ones that are paying twice. So I'm not saying that you should not publish in these journals, but it is good to be aware of the funding mechanics in this situation because they are not ideal for those who are on the payment end. So how do you figure out if a journal, which model they use? If a journal says that all of their content is open access, that's gold. Or if there's no APC, platinum or diamond would be the term for it. If the journal says that you have an option of making your article available openly, that's the hybrid model. But this is something that you can contact me for help with if you're not sure of the model or if you want to see if your journal fits with one of our funding deals. And we do have some tools that can help figure out which journals are eligible within our funding deals. So our Elsevier deal has a pretty robust search interface that can very clearly tell you which journals are part of our deal, which ones are eligible for APC waivers. There also are lists, like Sage has a list of their gold journals that are eligible for our discount. And of course, you can contact me about this as well. Now we're going to switch over to talking about sharing open access scholarship. So here we're talking about sharing scholarship that may have been published behind a paywall initially, and then getting the option to share it through open access. If you've been at UNCG a while, you may remember NC Docs, our old institutional repository, which looks like it was built in the early 2000s and was built in the early 2000s. It has moved to a new updated system that is much more robust and functional. It is part of Digital Greensboro, which is hosted here in the libraries. The site also includes digitized cultural heritage materials, UNCG history, things like that. But there's a module specific for NC Docs for open access scholarship based here at UNCG. And if you had a profile and or scholarly works in the old system, it has been moved to the new system. So you do not need to do anything to get your scholarship from the old one to the new one. So this is still our open access repository. It still shares publications, presentations, other scholarly works from UNCG, and it provides that stable long-term platform for sharing your open access scholarship. It also continues to provide scholarly profiles for faculty, staff, and other researchers. And now there is actually the option for faculty to customize their own profiles. So there's certain things that you can do where you could edit like contact information, bio information, research interests, things like that. We're going to be doing a deeper dive on NC Docs later this semester. There is a sign up. It's also through this research and applications webinar series. So we'll be talking more about that in about 2 months. Why would you use this? So NC Docs can share your scholarship through open access and can often get permission to share articles that were initially published closed access behind paywalls. So this is something that we handle. We reach out to publishers, we check policies, and we add things where we can get permission. We can't always add everything, but this is a chance to bring together potentially more of your scholarship in an open access manner through NC Docs. There also is an improved statistical module in this new system where you can see downloads and usage of your works. It helps scholars elsewhere access your work, things that might have originally been published behind a paywall. It also helps us at UNCG highlight the research output of the institution. So show the work that's being done here. How do you submit your work? So now faculty and staff can edit their own profiles, but our team still handles checking copyright and loading publications. So you would still need to reach out to us for that. We have a submission form online. You can also email us. As usual, you can send documents like articles or slides or a list of publications. We would check over those, see what we can get permission for, contact you if we need more information, and get those things loaded in the system as allowed. Okay, that's the really quick whirlwind about NC Docs. I want to say a few other things about open access before we wrap up. There are some related areas where we provide support. We often get questions about journal quality. Unfortunately, there are predatory journals out there that kind of pretend to be quality open access journals, but are not. We have a guide and tutorial about that topic, and that's definitely something that I can help with if you have questions. We've mentioned open educational resources. We have a guide about that. Open science is an increasingly important area. UNESCO has a good site about that. Open Policy Finder is a tool that we use with NC Docs to learn about publisher copyright and sharing policies. So if you as an author are interested in like diving in on learning about your target publisher and what their policies are, that might be something for you to look at. And I also wanted to mention archive.org as an example of an open access preprint server. So that site is specifically for certain fields: physics, mathematics, computer science, economics, and some related areas. And that model is for sharing papers that have not yet gone through peer review, but have perhaps been submitted to journals. So getting that scholarship out quickly to the field, even before it has gone through review and been published. That's not a model that's used in all fields, but it is a way to, if it's the model of your field, to get your work out there and kind of claim that area of scholarship even before your work has been published. Also, here in 2026, feels like no presentation or discussion would be complete without mentioning AI. So one question we sometimes get is, if I share my work through open access, is it going to be harvested by AI? Is it going to be used to train AI models? And the answer is that it very well may be. Libraries and other institutions that host open access scholarship are seeing a lot of activity from AI bots coming at library websites, sometimes bringing them down as these crawlers are trying to get content. You can imagine that, open access scholarship that has been through peer review and has been published is going to be of higher quality than a lot of things that are on the internet. So that is content that AI tools really want. I'm not saying this is a good thing. I'm just saying this is a thing. But sadly, even if you are publishing behind a paywall, publishers may still be licensing your non-open access content to be used to train AI models without your permission. There's a article linked here to a Chronicle of Education article about, I think it was Taylor and Francis and Wiley. Let me make sure of that. Yes, Wiley and Taylor and Francis have announced partnerships with tech companies that allow them to use academic content from those publishers to train AI models. They did not ask authors in this situation. And in many cases, they don't have to ask because typically, for those of us who are publishing in journals, when we sign those copyright agreements, we are basically signing away all of our rights. Again, not saying that this is a good thing, saying this is the landscape that we are in right now, which is pretty wild. So a little bit more about this. I'm definitely not an expert, but I am, trying to learn as things are happening. So Emory University has a pretty good guide with links to publisher statements and things that publishing organizations have said related to AI. So if you're interested in learning about what academic publishers are doing and saying related to AI, that is a potential starting point. And then there are a couple of articles and things here that relate to this topic, where if you wanted to read more, these could be some starting points. Okay, so we're going to wrap up here. And there definitely are challenges with open access, but overall, it can help raise the visibility of your work while also helping scholars and readers get access to content and research that they might need and might not otherwise be able to get. And the libraries here at UNCG are here to help you with open access learning, funding, and sharing. So if you need assistance with any of this, we would love for you to reach out. Okay, we've got time for questions now. And I've got the wrap-up slides with my contact information and the link. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing. And then also, I think probably stop the recording if it will let me. Okay, stopping recording.